And in this wrap up to the ADLG competition in Helsinki, we're actually going to do something nothing ADLG-ish at all. This is all about tanks. If you're a fan of tanks and you just come straight for this one, happy days. The reference to ADLG will probably confuse you, but this is a load of photos that I took at my walkthrough, my visit to the Parola Armour Museum north of Helsinki in Finland, with its fantastic collection of kind of really cool and really unusual stuff. I took loads of photos of tanks from different angles, but also, well, armoured fighting vehicles if you want to geek out about that. And also I took quite a lot of pictures of the captions as well, because there's a lot of information in there, and Finland's kind of unusual place in the war and in tank usage and post-war stuff is very worth capturing. So there's a lot of text here. All of this stuff also will appear on my website on www.Madaxeman.com. I'll put a link to that at the end in a special section in which I upload all these photos to a gallery, so you can scroll through them slowly rather than having to quickly press pause and zoom in on a web page. So here we go, the Parola Armour Museum. Where is it? It's north of Helsinki. That's about an hour and a bit's drive. What I did, I had a spare day in Helsinki, so just before I was flying out, so I went up to the airport and picked up a car, drove up this kind of two-track road through forest in what should have been sort of summery weather, but it was a bit grey. Did the tank museum. It's got really cool stuff. Yeah, it's not enormous, so it's fairly straightforward to do. You can do it in a few hours, and with the trip back as well. And then what's it all about? Well, it's a unique collection. There's a lot of Russian stuff there. A lot of it is about the Winter War and the other war against Russia in during the Second World War, where they ended up capturing all sorts of bits and pieces of Russian kit. So if you're a war gamer or a modeler, you probably own far more BT-42s, T-50s and BA-10s than exist in the world. That's something for you to know. But again, it's a great little museum, and really kind of some interesting stuff we'll come into. More than 30,000 visitors a year, 70 armoured vehicles, 40 guns, one of which you can have a play with, and a train as well. But loads of background information, and it really gives you a good overview of Finland in the Second World War and Finland's use of tanks since then. So wading straight in, having skipped the shop, which isn't desperately exciting. It's got a few funny t-shirts, but that's it. You get into this sort of first hall, which has got some of the key unusual bits. So we're straight in with the unusual thing here. We've got kind of the Finnish, not quite allied, that's the wrong word for it, with the Germans, reverse swastika malarkey. And this is a Swedish tank, anti-aircraft tank, from what I remember. Probably one of only a very small handful ever built, used, and then presumably didn't, found it wasn't really useful quite soon after being deployed. And here we go. We got lots and lots of these things, and this is, it depends on what order these photos have actually recorded it or reordered themselves into it. But you've got to see the continuation war. You've got to see the war against the Soviet Union. There's actually quite a small distance between the border of Russia and well, even getting to Helsinki, so it must have been pretty grim and pretty bitter. And so this is the area it's sort of covering. And then there's quite a few of these, and not just my finger creeping into shot, I'm afraid, but quite a few of these. This is the StuG. There were German StuGs operating, and then the Finnish army ended up picking up a load of StuGs as well, and they've got some really interesting stuff. So here's your real cutaway of the inside of a StuG assault gun in Finnish service there. You can see right into it, see what it would have been. Otherwise this would have been a bit of an easy target for you. Again, a few more close-up shots there of the driver's seat, how it all looks out the top, where they used to keep the shells, how the gun would have been mounted, how it's all painted white inside. You don't want to touch the shells, you never know. Health and safety is not quite as woke, I suppose is the word, or sensible as it is in other places, but I'm sure they've disarmed these ones. And yeah, bit more close up, you can see some of the radio stuff in there, some of the ventilation. Is that, look, Second World War, probably modern with that plug in it. Driver's cupola out the top, and again you can see this must have been used in the field for some sort of training and an explanation of how tanks work for the Finnish armoured forces. Not the most comfortable seat. I definitely had a more comfortable seat in the little car that I hired driving up. And there's the back of it. There's the back of your Stug, and you can see that weird anti-aircraft gun kind of sat behind it as well. Someone's stolen the tracks off this one, but if you want to see what the back of a Stug is and how high quality that German welding is, Stugs all over Europe, but there's a lot of them in this museum. Anti-tank rifles. Hard to believe that anti-tank rifles were a thing, but you know, at the start of the war, particularly, the armour's quite light. I love this one. It comes on skis. How much more finished you want, and it does look like it's actually kind of dangerous. Other ones just look like very, very big rifles. So, and again, there's all sorts of little anecdotes and things like that here. You got to watch out. Greasy boxes full of gasoline and other flammables. No one has time to bail out when they're on fire. Anti-tank gunners, they really did like their anti-tank gunning, mainly because they didn't really have as many tanks and they had a lot of forest to hide in. So it's always good. The anti-tank alphabet. So the terror caused by the tank is more dangerous than the tank itself. Yeah, we've all seen that one. Remember the LMGs, learn the weak points, always have a reserve, masses and masses of anti-tank guarantee, separate them from the infantry. All good wargaming idioms here, especially be brave but not suicidal. And they can never be too many trained anti-tank defence personnel. So that was 1944 when they were sorting stuff out. But yeah, again, love the one on skis. The elephant gun. It's only 20 mil. Well, I say only, but if you're carrying a 20 mil cannon around and shoving it around on skis, that's pretty pokey. So what happened? How did it all end? The war. Loads of stuff here, all sorts of different bits and pieces, but there's some really big numbers to kind of pick out. You know, delivering anti-tank Panzerfaust 26,000, 2,000 Shreks to Finland between April and September 44. 210 Pak 40s, 60 were lost in the battles. So that means a lot survived, got away with it. StuGs and Focke-Wulf's 190s towards the end of the war as well. 10 tanks, these 10 Stugs made a huge difference and really kind of features heavily around the museum. And these are crazy numbers. The Soviets lost 900 tanks in summer 44, most of them in one particular area. The Finns lost 55, of which some were armoured cars, 8 Stugs, prime movers. That's a tractor, isn't it? 22 stolen, captured T-26s, Vickers tanks. It's unbelievable they were still going in 44. The BT-42 and 1 captured ISU 152. So again, crazy numbers. I guess the bottom line is, the message here is you don't want to mess with the Finns, really, not even in the summer, never mind the winter. And again, here's another classic, T-34-76, a captured one, repainted in some sort of Finnish colours, and you can see various other bits that we're going to come to. You got to love these signs. Please don't climb on the tanks. But we do come around to a different view of that a bit later, so something to look forward to. And again, the old kind of reverse swastika in Finnish service. This does look like kind of murky Finnish camouflage, I think, for sure. And there it is. There's a few of these that were captured, maybe not as many as you think, but so T-34, 1941. Finns captured the first one in 41. And this one was 41, earlier on. So it had some shortcomings apparently, but it still was kind of worked. And captured in 43, had 4 T-34s there. So it was withdrawn from service, active service, in 1961. I imagine it was completely worn out. And yeah, top quality Russian to the front engineering and welding there, but you know, clearly it must still work to keep going to 61. And it's all cool. There are a load of models there as well. You've got the full sort of suite of Russian and German tanks in here. I think these are mostly the German ones, aren't they? Just looking at that one, that's a bit Russian stuff at the end there. Always nice to get some toys. Always nice to get some little dioramas. Textbook, they're fixing the engine on that Tiger there, and some of these are quite nicely weathered as well. Loads of different variations of Mardas, as there always were. Always good for wargamers, and some more modern stuff as well. This really weird range of tanks that the Finns had after the war that we'll come on to later, and again, another few nice model shots, nice bit of weathering and camo on that one for sure. And here we start getting the captured stuff. Captured KV1, captured T-34-85, captured T-34-76, captured God knows what that is, BT-42 in there. No wonder I don't recognize it, it's pretty rare. And again, nice little bit of modeling skills in there. And then we start getting loads and loads of pictures of StuGs in situ, relocated as fixed gun positions, defending airports. Look at this. This was 1987. So they kept some sort of StuGs defending airports until 1987. Here are some in 1966. They've got a slightly less cringe-inducing national insignia there, but they're still driving StuGs around in 1966. But I imagine the Russians would have been a little bit worried after the mauling they took trying to do it. This is some of the famous stuff when they did add-on concrete armour. Unfortunately, there's none left in the museum that have still got the armour, but there's a picture to show that it exists. And T-34s for the fins, there's quite a lot of information here about the T-34. I'll just let you read that for a little bit. What's the highlights there? The fourth one fell off the lock into a canal in 1944. It was then moved to the Armour thing for repair, but it still managed to fight against the Germans in 1944. They also got some from Germany as well. The Germans had got some. They sold them to the Finns. I guess the Finns knew how to use them. 3, but you're still talking tiny numbers here, particularly given those Russian losses of 900. And then the 85s as well, slightly bigger ones, almost factory new. It says redone in their tricolour. The large sort of reverse swastika is added to the side so that they didn't get shot. Not much ammunition either. So, but again, a number of them, 9 in fact in total. So again, if you're wargaming and you've got 9 of these, you've got them all. You could even give them their own numbers there. There's the numbers for you to choose to stick on the turrets. So there's that beauty again. That's your color coding. That's what you want to be looking for your camo. And then we go into everywhere sort of as a Renault FT17, which always amuses me. Everywhere's got an Opel Blitz truck as well, but that's a pretty cool kind of Renault thing nonsense, particularly with some really rather funky camouflage there that you may wish to do. And what's about this one? The Model 17. Ooh, can't quite see the text there. I wonder if I took a closer one. It's just so rubbish, isn't it? It's amazing to think they were almost in action at the same time as the T-34s. And then leaving that first entry level hall, you just get a few bits and bobs. Obviously there's a StuG everywhere. A ZSU 57 twin. You've got kind of a United Nations little ferret thing and a Humber pig there. The ferret, UN service, wherever that one was. Again, one of the interesting things about all these signs, you've got the Finnish, the Swedish, the English, and the Russian, because I guess until relatively recently, and stuff changed quite a lot, there would have been Russian tourists here coming to see some of the Russian stuff in Finnish service as well. Yeah, the ZSU 57 in Finnish service in a pretty bold tricolour black and 2 greens camo scheme, and all the bits to a StuG that will be restored. That must be its towing bar, and added to the collection. So, and then you get all sorts of stuff. Once you go into the second hall, you're getting into the much more modern tanks, and you've got a BMP-1. You've always got to identify which ones there are, but look how low profile and well sloped all that armour is at the front of this thing, ready to kind of, well, slide through whatever it was going to do watery. And you may well have spotted there the Leo 2 next to it, but there's me standing up a little bit better to get another picture of the bump. This one's still got a bit of battering. It's not been repainted since it was dropped from Finnish service, because the Finns were using this weird combination of NATO and Russian kit. Part of it was to sort of keep the Russians at bay. They were buying stuff in the 50s and 60s and 70s for hard currency for the Russians and that sort of kept them on side. but equally they were able to buy stuff from NATO nations as well. Loads of smoke dispensers on there, bit more AT missile stuff on the top as well, bit of battered paintwork down the sides. And then here you go. What two great tanks to have in your armoury at the same time. You've got a Leo 2 and a T-72 there. I wonder if that's the speed limit you're allowed to do. Probably on a Finnish road, there's not a lot of traffic. And your T-72, don't see these, but again in exactly the same camo scheme, which is kind of cool. Actually, that one's got some more brown on it, but maybe that's a bit more NATO later stuff. And the Leopard 2, when did they get it? Finland bought 124 of them in 2009, some as mine layers, some as bridge layers. And then we've got a guy in his Bundeswehr outfit. Well, sorry, the individual is in the German outfit. The Bundeswehr brought this in 1980, so the Finns didn't get it for quite some time. But it's this particular one was brought in 2017, so it must have been an ex-Bundeswehr one, which is presumably the Finns are still using theirs. And then Finland bought yet more in 2014 from the Netherlands as well, for 200 million euros. But look at this for a sign in a tank museum. Yes, you can climb on these two tanks at your own risk. That's just awesome, isn't it? That's just, you know, who is going to say no to that? And here is me not saying no, stood on the top of a Leo 2, looking at all the rest of the stuff in this this second shed. And Bosch, that's the engine stuff in a Leo 2. If you ever want to drop you know, Molotov cocktail, that's probably what you're aiming for. That's looking down through the glass, well, glass protective to stop you actually jumping into the tank. You can't do that. Through the perspex into the insides of it, straight down the barrel, looking at this slightly skeletal Russian tank there, and another view inside. Not entirely different to the StuG, but still there. It's kind of different. And a bit lower down it. Let's just get proper sighting onto this particular tank. Let's have a look down. You're pretty high. I'm stood up on top of the tank, but that's what a BMP looks like from the top. If you want to be doing that Finnish camouflage on your BMPs, that's a good angle to see which bit's black, which bit's green. All these big bold stripes and non-jagged, non-soft edges there. And there's the slightly darker T-72, slightly more cast turret kind of look to it there that I'm doing. And, you know, I'm allowed to go stand on the T-72, so here I am. On top of that, you can see why this tank's got so battered. It's got everything pointing at it. You've got the perspex there, so you can't jump in too. All sorts of odds and sods inside it. Bit more cramped, but a padded seat though, bit nicer. That's looking across at the back end of the Leopard, and you can see the bit of the BMP there as well. And another kind of view down the hall, down the way into the main part of that building. Bit of close up, see how the stuff kind of fits around the gun mantle, what colour that is, how it wears out as well. More of these sharp edges on the painted camo, and again, here's some tricolour camo. So yes, this is the German Leopard 2, isn't it? In NATO 3-tone with rounded edges. So that's how you can tell it's not actually a Finnish one. And let's have a look at this T-72. Here's a bit of information to it. Manufactured in 1988 and introduced to Finland in 88, with only 146 kilometres on the tank. But it was never in active service with any Finnish unit. So that's intriguing. But T-72 M1 tanks were two Finnish wartime armour brigades for a long time. But this one, this particular one, must have been brought in as a kind of demo or something like that, and not actually not actually used, or maybe brought in after they stopped it. Just picked up another factory fresh one. So, you know, there you go. And then what have we got here? The great, I think the Gvozdika, with some windows cut in it for extra scenics. So this is your 122mm Russian self-propelled artillery with the little Finnish sign on it. Not allowed on this one, I'm afraid. But you can look through that big hole, see inside it, see how they would have dropped the 122 shells into that and fired them away at quick succession, and then whizzed off to somewhere else. And here you've got a training thing for engineers with a T-72 that's had everything cut away, just sort of the basic steelwork skeleton left underneath it, and really allows you to see where the mechanical bits are underneath all of that armour. into the T-72 tank. Quite complex, or quite a process to actually cut that away. Let's have another look back at these two guys. That's presumably a finished number plate, just in case. And then you start getting some really interesting stuff, or super rare stuff, as in rare, it was never applied. So APCs, Finland does make some decent APCs, and there's been a bit of a history of doing it. So this was Valmet's attempt to deliver the Sisu to the Finnish Defence Forces, and there's currently still some in service by all accounts. And let's have a look inside. Actually, I think this is inside no, I think it might be inside that APC. There's an MTLB somewhere else later. Some little comfy seats there to have a look at. You can stand and look out the top of it, this APC here, and see back, have a quick look at what's going on with the Leopard and with the T-72 and the bump from around the back. The T-55, everyone's got a T-55 picked up from somewhere, and again, just post-war, 55 to 60. Finland's been buying them in about 100 of them, some of which are modernised. And the whole fleet written off. No, I presume that doesn't mean they've all crashed into a ditch or something. That must mean they're no longer used, which is kind of sensible. But there it is, looking a little bit more old school than some of the other ones. Again, you can't climb onto that one. It would have had a pretty big gun malarkey on top of it. You can see the straight edges of the camo that they must have had quite some time. And this thing is a six-wheeler APC, Finnish Armed Stories, the Valmet. The Valmet was close, but this one didn't win. So, and it's been kept in a drivable position. So this is actually a sort of demo version. There's the back end of your T-55. It's got the log to get itself out of a ditch, I guess. So yeah, that must have been the thing that I was in, the one that did get into the Finnish army. And here, looking at the back of that T-72, you can see some of the engine grills and things like that, filters that go into the engine at the back, and how the cogs all fit around the tracks. And yeah, look at this. This really has been color coded, all the wires inside. So either if you're repairing it, this is great, or if you're planning how to shoot it, this is great as well. It tells you exactly the squishy soft bits to aim for. This must have been a wonderful project for some apprentice engineers to cut all this away, I'm sure. The T-54 again, one of the first ones we bought from the Soviet Union post-war, really. Writing off started in 1991. That's not a load of crashes. They must have just started phasing them out of service and cut open in 1969. Again, lot of pipe work, a lot of cabling in there, and quite a lot of thick armour to cut through and do so tidily as well. So they did do very well there. And there's your couple of APCs, the more modern stuff, looking pretty much ready for Space Marines to jump out and be attacked by aliens, I think, in that one. A little bit of a turret from something. I wonder if that's PT-76. Who knows? No, one of those. Well, some sort of turret. Keith, here we go. Tried to be built by it in experimental use, but yes, that's the one. Sorry, that's the UK. Again, another one of two prototypes in there. Never made it into manufacturing. And then you get outside and you start seeing all sorts of little tanks hiding in a big shed at the top of a small flight of steps, or in fact a slope. I guess yes, tanks have to be accessible to the to wheelchair customers as well, I guess. That's important. So what do you have? You have some turrets. Some, I think these may have been coastal defense. Yes, like coastal artillery pieces. So 56 pieces, modified into the early 1990s, phased out in the 2010s. So yeah, using the T-55 tank gun turret, the main weapon of Finnish coastal artillery. So those T-55s were still in use until the 2010s in some way, shape or form. There's a few more of them kicking around. That barrel does look long. Imagine if you're in a bunker and you've got to get into a T-55 to shoot at ships. That'd be a bit weird. Then a few were used for target practice as well. Didn't survive quite so well. But Iskim set it for Ned Slag. So that's definitely been Ned slagged, I think. And then here you go, you've got all sorts of things, the Russian nicked kind of stuff, plenty of these. Some of these are the super rare ones, some are not, different coming. These are all outside, and they are taking a bit of a battering from the weather, even though they're under this shed, but ultimately they are tanks, and that's what they're supposed to do. So the Vickers Armstrong 6-tonner with a 37mm Swedish Bofors cannon in there. Let's have a look. Can I rotate that around? Ooh, let's see. No, it doesn't look like I can kind of do that this time. So Vickers Armstrong, made in Newcastle upon Tyne. And then what do we have here? You've got another BT type Russian tank. This one is T-26s. They captured plenty of them. They captured 114 and repaired them, and they were phased out in 1962. So you can see all these couple of tanks here, the T-26s. And what's this one at the front? Oh, we got another slightly funky one here. That one had a name. Looks like it had some sort of whitewash malarkey going onto it. We've still got the T-26 nomenclature in it. Modified from OT-33 flamethrower to an ordinary tank by removing the flamethrower and installing an actual gun. That, to be honest, that's how I would have done it as well. So yes, slightly different way of doing it. Then you've got this funky little thing whizzing along. This one that sat behind it. So again, it's just all of those light tanks that seem to be grossly underpointed in all sorts of war game systems. So the Russians end up fielding far more of them than ever existed, or possibly do existed. This one's had a bit of a bad day, maybe why it's a little bit burnt out. That one still got a cute name to it. This one at the front, making the reverse swastikas a little bit more visible. And then here, what do we got? We've got a T-40, lopsided turret stuff going on with this one. And there it goes. Is that the same one? I believe that's the same one. Yeah, that's probably the same one. And then, sorry, T-50. Only 65 were made. So again, pretty rare. There are probably wargamers with nearly that many. Varillishov in St. Petersburg made this one. Little stubby gun, kind of missing from that one. And then this was cool. This was a great tip that was making all sorts of noise perched on top of this barrel. And I stepped back, once you watched it, you saw it was occasionally jumping in and out of this kind of machine gun hole, and that must have been where its nest was. So that's a pretty great place to be keeping a nest if you're a little bird. That's the way you want to be doing it, isn't it, for sure. But yeah, super cool. Bit of bird watching to do with the tanks as well. And let's see, can we move on from that one? T-70s, yes. T-70s, 8,000 were built. Russians used it and captured, and the only one ever captured out of those 8,000, which is kind of cool. And it was never in use by the Finnish army. I suppose if you've got thousands of tanks, you don't want just one. Doing 2 engines, that's yeah. How complicated is that one? Yeah, there you go. There's the T-70. We've seen that before. The gun's been taken out. It's slightly lopsided, but if you've got to fit 2 engines in there, I guess that's what happens, isn't it? And then we get into some kind of funky, interesting stuff here with all sorts of bolts and big guns, things that bolt on bits and bobs. Look at that. This is one of these crazy early war Russian multiple turret monstrosities with just however anybody thought this was going to be sensible ever, who knows. I'm not quite sure how you would have even got into some of this one. So the T-28, so 2 tanks were captured, and then it looked a bit like a train. So yeah, one was turned into a recovery tank, and they were scrapped, but then it was saved. This one was captured in '39 in the Karelian Isthmus, which where everything went on. Some of that extra armour was bolted on by the Finns during the continuation war to make it slightly more survivable. And then you get into the KVs, KV series, and you get some actual proper camo being painted on them. KV-1, built in captured in Russian Karelia, reused in '42, in service till '45, given to the Armour Museum in '61. The Klimy tank, and yeah, that looks pretty solid, doesn't it? And obviously it's faded, but that gives you an idea of how to do some of the camo if you're doing the finished tanks. There's one that's not got quite so camoed up, but again, some grim old kind of welding around the front of that one. Yeah, different kind of thing. That looks like that may have had extra armor bolted onto it, which has not happened to this one. So yeah, the fins just stick extra armor onto everything. This is kind of a more naked one, if you like. And yeah, you can see it from a slightly different angle, which makes it a bit clearer on the way these have been differed. And then you get into the let me think. This is sort of early model T-34 with that sort of particular early type of turret in the camo. The one next to it without. Again, one next to it without. You've all seen a T-34. You know what they look like, but these are pretty close. You can walk up to them and bang them with your fist and scratch your knuckles. And then looking further along the line, you can see a few more bits of bigger guns coming up. Again, nice spot of the camo on the sides there. Early Eastern Front. And then they picked up by the Germans, sold onto the Finns so they could use it. Used in service until the 60s in the southern coast of Finland. So you can see the original Soviet manufacturing markings, which I think, yep, I took a close-up of. So these are just scratched in, presumably or welded in or something like that when the casting was still being done. It's pretty old school compared to that plate on it from Vickers on the earlier one. And again, another bit of the same sort of stuff there. So the 85, again in three-tone camo. Another shot looking back at the 76. Yep, the 85s captured 7 of them, and this is one of them actually captured. And so only 61 hours of driving on the clock, and straight away painted, turned round, used up to the 50s in the tank battalions, and into the Armour Museum in 61, who then repainted it back to the Second World War camo scheme. And then boom, it's always nice to get a bit of proper super heavy metal there. Oh, bit of a close-up, you can see the corrosion. Stem around the back, you can just walk all around these. There's no barriers or anything, there's no ropes and posts to look away from it. But yeah, get close to it, literally see the thickness of the welded together armor on these assault guns. Top kind of Cyrillic style writing, ideal for graffiti in Moscow, and top heavyweight unsubtle casting for that 152mm gun, and the ISU 152. So what it is, this was tank named another Joseph Stalin, captured 2 of them in June 1944, one of which was lost 3 days later, and then it was kind of caught. So and then here we get some kind of lumpy, God knows what that is. That's got to be something very, very funky, hasn't it? Can we see that? That's the BT-42. Wow, that's just nonsense, isn't it? I think this one I'm remembering is the one of which there's kind of none in the world, and that really has been bolted up. So BT-42 gun, it's the only BT-42 spared from scrapping, came into the Armour Museum in 61, given markings from the continuation war. None of the ones from the actual war have been preserved. This was one that sort of came after the war by the looks of it. Yeah, so transformed into assault guns, 8 of them are lost, in service up until 44. So yeah, super rare, but you probably got a dozen if you play Flames of War, I guess. And there's another great picture of it. Just top heavy, isn't it? Assault gun BT-42 stumpy thing. And we're back to the StuGs. As always, in the 3-tone camo, this one's been tidied up very nicely. It's even been given a cute name for you there. Much newer paint job. And built in 43, arrived in 43, killed 5 enemy tanks, and you can see the rings around the barrel. Yep, there they are. You even know who's driving it, really. And G model, rubber covers, gun shield made of plate, periscope. In 66, it was still in service, and markings from the continuation war. There's a slightly rustier one that's not been refurbed yet. Let's have a look at this one. Never took part in action, but used for defense. G model again. There it is. Well, very, very different mantlet, cast rather than constructed. That's just much more tidy, really, isn't it? And then Panzer IV, which is always nice to see. Post-war green, so it must have been used in training for tank troops until '62 when they were dropped from the roster. And there it is, a Panzer IV from the back, owned by the Finns, used for training after the war. Bit of StuG wheels, bit of saggy. You know, if you're looking for a track colour, that's a track colour. If you want your tanks to look like they've sat in a museum for quite some time, and then as you sort of walk out, you stumble across these other things. So there's another kind of tank lurking by the gates, and of course, as everywhere, there's always got to be a Sherman. You can see they put chains on it to stop it rolling away. I'm not sure that would really help if it did start to go down that hill. And then again, when you're walking around the museum, you do spot this Pack 40 in a gun position, sighted down the road, perfect to ambush anybody visiting the museum. Dare to say, I didn't see that when I was going in. So if I was a tank driver, I would have been picked off by the Finnish anti-tank crew. There's an armoured train. Unfortunately, when I was there, the shed was being refurbished. What a wonderful piece of kit that scissor lift is. So that's sort of a long distance view of an armoured train being refurbished. And then you get into much more modern and, again, still slightly weird and wonderful stuff up at the top of the hill in a slightly different shed. So here is a whole set of sort of strangely British and other post-war tanks. And you start off thinking, what are these two things really? And what are they doing here? So the Comet was just about squeezed into the end of the Second World War, and Finland bought 40 of them, which were already obsolete. So why did you do that? Well, just used for training purposes. So this was a training tank. They just bought something that was already rubbish by 1960 just to teach people to drive around and point. And then you've got this madness as well. The Charioteer. Cromwell tanks with a Centurion tank gun and a huge, great turret, which again is just bonkers, really, isn't it? They bought 3 and then another 35, and they were used for training. So nobody ever really thought these were kind of serious, or certainly the Finns never really did. But you know, I guess if something bad had happened, they would have wheeled them out and hid them in the snow and done something terrible to the enemy with them. So yeah, slightly crazy. The Charioteer. And here actually is one looking ungainly and definitely not 1960s-esque. And then you get much more flat, groovy Russian stuff, super close up. This one with bits of dozer blade as well. And this is your T-72, made in Czechoslovakia, KTM 6M2 mine clearing dozers as well. So, so this is one of 96. Delivered to Frankfurt to East Germany, and then it came onto the procurement list of the Finns. Finished in 1996, and then at the Armour School, and then into storage. So yeah, you got your dozer blades in there. You probably got those if you can manage to glue them onto the front of your little tanks properly. Loads of smoke dispensers, bit of 3-colour camouflage as well. All sorts of odds and sods attached to it. On the outside of it, and then a proper kind of pure armoured recovery vehicle here. I'm trying to think which chassis this one's built on. Did I take a thing that would tell me? And then some much more modern, I think this is the Patria, the Finnish made 8x8 that all sorts of people are interested in buying. Yeah, the Patria AMV 8x8. This is like proper modern, for sale, 2-day. Very much sort of in the mould of the Boxer and other things, ready to be bought and used by NATO forces. And what's this one? That's I think that may be yeah, that's another Patria. You can see that there's a 6x6, slightly shorter wheelbase version, much better for going around corners, I guess. And then some sort of cool aliens. Is that a VAB maybe? And let's have a look. No, Finnish built that one. So that's a Sisu XA202. Much bigger windows. You know, maybe you're not so worried about being shot in that. So it's still a Patria thing, and command and control. It's been built since the 80s and used in Finland and Sweden. So must be pretty good on rough terrain. and that's a prototype. Then they're all starting to get all sorts of stuff added. They're starting to get artillery added to it, whiz itself around in the forest, do some artillery, and the 8x8 and the Amos high readiness brigades for armored mortar. And then of course you've got some post-war Russian stuff. So you've got BTRs, BTR 60, or possibly BTR 60 8-wheeler as well. They were doing that quite some time ago, and again, another slightly different BTR 80, a slightly more modern one, over 5,000 pieces around. So loads and loads and loads. They were going to think about buying them, but the Soviet Union collapsed. They didn't buy them, and away you go. So after that excitement of modern tanks, you get a shed full of engines. Yeah, cool stuff. And then you get an MTLB in half a greenhouse that you're allowed to climb all over. So it's all great. And then there's kind of another sort of outdoor greenhouse that looks like it should be a cafe, but is actually the anti-tank artillery room, which has got all sorts of weird and wonderful things, like this super groovy low profile AT gun, the 75mm 44 at the end of the war, sort of a Pak 40, but groovier and cooler. What's this? It's got to be a tractor, T20 Comsolex tractor. Finns obviously nicked loads of those. They must have been left behind, more than 200 of them. They gave up in 1961 and continuation war. I think that's a Pak 40, isn't it? Yep, from the year 1940, anti-tank cannon from the 1940. Loads of different bits. Some of these must be Russian 76s. Some of them must be German bits and bobs as well. Coming in there, yeah, that's German made. That's German made. So probably more packs with these extra funky wheels at the back that you don't normally see even in model kits as extras. So loads of anti-tank weapons. You've seen all of these going from the Panzerfaust and the Shrek to the kind of the Milan type weapons. Heat bomb. Wow. Stick that on the end of a 37mm anti-tank gun barrel and fire that at someone. That would clunk them out if it hit them on the head, wouldn't it? And here we get some other little smaller caliber guns, quite a lot of them, but you know, a gun's a gun. This is a Pak 37, looking pretty distressed formation. Look at this thing. Yeah, I'd much prefer to be hiding behind that. That looks a lot more bulletproof. A Pak 36, 37, and then another French 25mm anti-tank cannon with some groovy camouflage there. Yep, they got 40 of them, and then they bought 200 from German war booty, which presumably they'd liberated from the French. And but you know, they were feasible because the Russians were using rubbish made out of cardboard as well, so it must have worked. And then here, a mobile machine gun on some pretty big wheels, all sorts of Russian anti-tank missiles, and whatever this one, yeah, Malinka. So some of these would be the spandrels and spigots and other types of things whizzing along. Whatever that one is, a Vigilant. That's the British one. Wow, yeah, that's old school, fired off of ferrets, no doubt. And of course, there's some guy with skis and Molotov cocktails, wearing a sheet and loads of furry hat in the picture of the snow. And even better, there's a gun simulation. So you've got to shoot some 2 tanks, and you've got to whiz the wheels round and to up and down and across and lay the guns properly, then press the button, pull the thing, reload. So you've got to look for a devastating hit. So you sit here, turn all these little handles, and you've got to sort of dot, and there's one tank there and there's another tank in the distance there that you've got to hit in the right sequence if you can. Kind of fun, and as it's a quiet museum, there's rarely anybody there, so you even get a chance to do that as an adult. And all in all, what a cracking little museum, actually. Some crazy stuff. Hopefully my inane chat hasn't been too nonsensical, or if not, you've been listening to it with the sound off. And as I say, you'll be able to look at all of these pictures in a bit more detail, or with more time on your hands, by going onto my website and following the link that you should be seeing pretty soon.